Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm excited to talk to this individual today. He and I have gotten a chance to connect, just like all my guests, through social media, and he's doing some remarkable things. He's got a family, and I'm dying to get into not only that, but his back history because he's got a great story behind him as well. But my good friend David James has joined me on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Bryan. How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. You and I've
All
gotten a
right.
chance to talk a little bit before we started recording. So it's been nice to get to know you a little bit. But let's dive into a little bit of back history of you, kind of how you grew up, and then, kind of the things you got into, and then what you're doing now, and obviously your family as well.
Oh, thanks again for having me. So my name's Dave. I grew up a Navy brat. Both parents were in the Navy. My biological father and my mother separated very early, but she remarried around 5, and he was also in the Navy. So we moved around a lot. I was from South Carolina to North Carolina to Florida. And about 8 years old, I grew up on the West Coast. We moved to the Bay Area. And there I had a pretty normal, good upbringing. I felt, probably like any other kid that just wanted to fit in, that moved a lot, right? And I did well with that, even at a young age. I was always showing off, um, you know, just trying to get attention. I was class clown a couple of times, but um, you know, going from spot to spot, and trying to always fit in, I don't think I ever really found a group of friends to like always have around forever, right? I did eventually find that later, but so this led me to bouncing around a bunch of groups at a young age, even neighbors, and um, being a Gen Xer in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s in California. There were lots of things that we shouldn't have been doing at those ages. It was parents still, come home when the street lights come on, drinking out of the garden hose kind of stuff. But there was a lot of exploring and figuring out, as a young boy.
Lost your camera.
Sorry about that. I hit a button by accident. Um, you know, Figuring out, who's family and whatnot. So about 1990, 91, I now have a younger sister and a younger brother. She's 8 years younger than me. He's 10 years younger than me. And my mom gets shipped off to Whidbey Island because she was in the reserves, to fill in for whoever was going to the Kuwait War, right? So there I'm 10 and a half, 11 maybe, 12. Quit my paper out. I was a paper boy for a little while. But now I'm, pseudo de facto mom, right? My dad still works normal. He's up at 4 a.m. every day, just like I was. Um, I'm, de facto mom. And that's a little bit too much responsibility for a 12-year-old at that time. At least the way that's how I perceive it now, right? It was good, but it never gave me that sense of these are my family. This is my family. These are my people. Like it was my younger brother and my younger sister. Like you guys are nuisances. I want to go hang out with my friends, right? So I was always into sports. I was really good at soccer, baseball, football. But once I got to high school, it's like after football, I just didn't care about any other sports. Now it's just hanging out and partying, and you know, being with the crowd. Um, so ironically enough, being with that crowd, and only wanting to worry about football, I knew a couple of the guys that had steroids. So I wanted to get some steroids so I could get, get bigger. Well, you can't exactly go ask your mom for $300 worth of steroids, right? Or $300 for steroids. And so I started selling weed, right? I'd take little nickel sacks, get, sell them for dime sacks. But sooner or later, that sped up really fast beyond, just weed. And every few bucks that we would make, now we're also using it to just supplement our partying, our booze, our weed. And sooner or later, those turn to all flavors of drugs around, teenage years, 14, 15, 16, 17, right? Ironically enough, never did steroids, not once to this day. But that set me on the path of being, more of the socialite, liking people coming to me for, getting some weed, or liking that I had extra money, right? Now I don't have to ask mom for clothes. Now I don't have to ask mom for steroids, but it happened so fast because it became meth. And early mid 90s meth that's not a road most people come back from, right? That turned into a quick 1.5 year spiral of, I didn't even graduate on time, right? Like I graduated with everybody, but I never walked. I was 6 credits shy because I was sleeping in class. At that point, I'd been arrested a couple of times, graffiti, small thefts from my habit, because it got that bad. It got to the point where I even burglarized my own neighbor's house. Shortly after that, I go to rehab. First time, it's white wall kind of rehab. Get kicked out of that after 10 days. Got a little violent. They don't like that. You can't put hands on people when you're trying to get sober, right? So I get kicked out of that. I got my case coming up, and my parents, they're now moving to the East Coast. Both got transferred. It's where we're at now. So go in front of the judge, because I didn't believe that I was going to have to if I was in rehab. So I get out, go in front of the judge, and they wanted 6 years in CYA. And I'm like, whoa. That's some heavy shit right there. And I was, it was probably the one time in my life I distinctly remember, like, this could be it. Like, I could check out right now and just not ever deal with that, right? But I didn't. It was a fleeting thought. And turns out they only wanted 3 months from me. I was 17 when it happened, 18 when I got to go to jail. And I wind up doing 3 months in, a little level 2 county, bounced around a little bit. But the day after I go, my parents moved east, and I knew they were doing it. It wasn't like they just up and left, right? So I do my time, I get out. I'm thinking, I'll just get a construction job. I can stay out here. I'm not moving out to the East Coast. And my mom, after like 1 week, was like, here's a ticket, get your ass out here. And, probably one of my better decisions in life. So I move out east, and it's like, all right, I got to make some better choices. I've always been a hard worker, right? I've been working. I was probably mowing lawns at 8, let alone paperboy at 10. Just always very, very driven to get what I want, because I was good at getting what I want and manipulating. but no, now it was really time to work. So I started working, got a quick Home Depot job for a year and a half, and that turned into me wanting to go into computers. So I got a loan, went to New Horizons Learning Center, got my A plus, Net plus, MCSE in the late '90s. Um, and from there, I just got a lot of experience and kept progressing, especially through the tech bubbles that we were going through and being in the area that we're in with government contracting and big tech. Um, so that's basically what I had been doing for the last 25 years, advancing my career. And, I bought my first house with my ex-wife at 24. Um, we got separated when I was 27, but we had bought another house. Um, and then when we got separated, um, that's when my drinking really started to take over. Because up until then, I had had my problems with drinking, especially since moving to the East Coast. um, West Coast, they find you, 18 with beer, they just pour it out, right? Go home, kid. Here they, extort you for taxes. um, but yeah. So I think by that time I had already had 2 DUIs. I had had at least 3 drunken publics, some underage possessions of alcohol. Um, and me all being very young and, like I got a good job, I've got a house, I've gotten separated now. Like, you know, the rest of life is advancing, right? It's really hard to see problems when everything else is good, right? Um, so get divorced, and for the most part, I was always in a monogamous relationship, but in between that monogamy over the years, it was just party animal central. And it was I probably went 6 or 7, I think it was 8 or 9 years without getting in any trouble at all. And, I would say it was probably 3 years of actually like being or not sober, being separated and doing me before it caught up. And it was like a series of DUI after DUI after DUI, a couple of years DUI, a couple of years DUI.
Mm.
And I'm not sure where exactly that I realized I had a problem, and finally admitted it to myself and pretended to go to more than just meetings and, just show up, right? um, but I didn't do anything to change it, right? I just kept getting out of trouble. That's all I would do.
Mm.
Um, some employers were less than thrilled with some of my things. Most had no idea. But my latest one before had actually been through some of these trials and tribulations with me and stood behind me, which was great because it was a shift in the collective thinking of, society of, oh, this guy's an alcoholic, as opposed to, hey, let's work with him. The last 10-15 years has been really good for support groups being more open, not so anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a reason it was anonymous to begin with, and that's never been me. So I've always been open and honest about what I go through. But it wasn't until 2017 where I finally was like, all right, I'm going to do this for me. I'm about to be 40. I can't, because at this point I wasn't getting in any trouble anymore because I didn't have a car. I was literally, for the last 2 or 3 years before that, I would just drink at home. right? It hadn't quite gotten to the point where I was drinking all week, um, or not able to perform my job. There were days, obviously, where I'd call out, but it wasn't 7 days a week, constant need for the substance. Um, so I went to a fancy pants rehab. I had seen it on ESPN. It's like, oh, here's palm trees and a pool. um, so I took out a loan on my 401k. Spent a pretty penny to go to basically a resort with a bunch of meetings and all the best food. And I brought my dog. That was really cool. And it did what it needed to do. It got me sober. It got me away from the substance long enough for me to make some changes. Because I was thinking, at that point, I wasn't married. I didn't have a kid. Like, I didn't have anybody to be responsible to or for other than myself. I just didn't realize, I was worth it. I just didn't care. I wasn't actively like trying to kill myself or anything, but I didn't care that it's Saturday morning and I'm opening a bottle of vodka. Right. Um, so I go to that rehab. I get 7 or 8 months sober and wind up, a buddy called me, said, hey, can you get to Greece? $400 on this, 1,900 for a sailboat trip. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I actually made it all the way to Greece without drinking, which was my first of flying without alcohol. But as soon as I got there, it's like you let loose a little bit, and it was an amazing trip. I did drink the entire way, but at the very end, I met my wife, and we had one little kiss goodbye as she put me on the sea jet as we left, and we talked for 3 months from there. She was living in Italy at the time, and I told her as soon as I got home, hey, I'm sobering up, right? That was just a vacation, right? So I fell in love with her and made plans to go to Italy 3 months later. And then halfway through those plans, I'm like, well, let me just bring her back. You know what? I'm just going to give her a ring on the bridge in Venice, and we'll see, right? And I hadn't drank. I did drink in Italy when we had met. Came back, stopped drinking again, and she got pregnant pretty quick, and it was great, right? That's what I wanted. I'm like, this is a beautiful story, right? Because it's what I had always wanted. I didn't have my boy till I was 41. I was starting to question my swimmers, you know what I mean? Because I had plenty of oopsies over the years, right? Like, well, what's going on with my guys? um, but from there, getting sober wasn't enough for what I wanted and what was now on my plate. I had always told girls in the past, I'll stop drinking, I'll stop smoking when I have a child, right? And that turned out to not be enough at the time for me. I was drinking again fairly quickly. It always starts off innocent. Her and I went to, one of the Italian spots, had some wine, and then, as we're going through life, and working and going to doctor's appointments and etc., it's just more and more, at least on my end, right? And it became a problem again, and I just wasn't a good person now that I look back at it. Like, I wasn't who I wasn't someone I would respect, looking back at it. Like, and that's the insanity of the disease of the brain, right? That you get when you've been drinking for a long time. It's, you have all these reasons to quit, all these reasons to stop. You've already been through it, or at least I have 100 times. All of these examples, and none of it was enough. Um, so in the summer of 2020, right as COVID had started, actually, I said, all right, I think my son was almost 2. I said, all right, I'm going to quit. And nothing bad had happened. I hadn't been arrested anytime recently or anything. It wasn't on probation. And I gave it the good try, right? And then I said, all right, nope, that's not going to work. Let's try antabuse. I put myself on antabuse. Got about 2 months right into the beginning of COVID. Was doing okay. Lost 10 pounds. Found out that it wasn't working. And there I go again, sneaking it off. Still no problems, but July 4th, I had a 4-day bender. And my wife, it was one of those ones where like your wife's gonna leave you. I didn't go to jail or anything, but like I just acted like such an asshole where it's like, how much can she tolerate? She moved here for this, that kind of thing. So I had been watching YouTube videos and came across my mentor, one of his videos, and I was like, boom, I'm in. And from that day forward is when I think my personal development process began. And that was like, it was like the beginning of the awakening, right? That path wasn't straight either, right? But that was what I needed at the time. Immediately sober. I was, and another part of the 4-day weekend was a buddy of mine sent me a picture that I didn't know was taken, and it's from an awful angle, and I'm eating ice cream, and it's a hoodie, and it's striped, and it's the most god-awful picture you could see of yourself. Just gut, like, and that was like, something's got to change, right? And I did it again, white knuckled. Not that I was white knuckling it and struggling with it, but it was not using any of the other tools that other people will teach you or having any spirituality at all, right? But I crushed it. I lost 45 pounds in 123 days, ripped, confident, sober, but disconnected still. I wasn't going to any meetings. I wasn't helping anybody. It was still, recovery for me was getting, all the shit that I broke in my area back together. Which, when that kind of thing is the norm, it will lead you back to, the vice, the quick escape as soon as things get hard if you haven't fixed anything, right? And one day I got, oh, I'm good now. I haven't drank for this long. I can drink again. That case of the fuck it's.
Right.
And that turned into like a 3-week relapse that got me arrested 2 times for drunk in public. I got into it with my roommate. Slash tenant who had been a friend for quite some time. Again, falsely charged, but I was the one that wound up with the felony charge. Ultimately dropped because I was just defending myself, but that set off another series of problems, right? In order to get out of jail in that time, I had to go straight to detox and straight to rehab, which I knew I needed detox at the time. that whole incident is one hell of a story. um, so I go through rehab, still on my program, still on my personal development process daily. Everything's getting hit. Um, I get out of rehab, and the 4 hours after that, which my company had been behind me the whole time, right? Um, I was excited about coming back to work, and they go, "We're not allowing you to come back to work until after we get some of this, that, and this." And I'm instant, and I've been there with 10 years now, right? Um, Instant anxiety. They're gonna fire me, right? It's just okay. So for 2 weeks, I, you know, got very little done around the house. Didn't feel productive. Thinking too much about what ifs and what plus I just gotten home. I'm trying to manage my own stuff. I starting to go to meetings, but really wasn't. I liked them. They were better than the ones before, but I still wasn't there. And so for 2 weeks, shit is just going wrong left and right. I mean, the garage door stops working, faucet's not working, replacement parts that are taking weeks because shipping was bad then are not the right ones. This, that. Wife is up to here with things going on because it's a new house. We had just bought, 6 months probably before, not brand new house, but we had moved from the beginning of COVID to mid 2020. We moved from our old spot and kept the other one. Got our own, finally, right? And I remember thinking that too, right before everything went bad, is everything that I had ever wanted was right here, right in front of me. This is perfect. And that was like, that was the level up right there, right? Because I've always been good about getting out of trouble. It's when things are good that I lie to myself, right? So everything's blowing up. I'm in IOP, which is over Zoom, and my wife had gone to take the boy to a doctor's appointment, and I was thinking, instead of going with them, being there like a dad, I'm thinking in my head, I have got to feel productive. I've got to get something done around this house. You go, it's only 5 minutes away. I'll take care of something, right? Not 2 minutes after she left, I was on the way to the store to get alcohol. And I remember thinking on the way there, consequences only get worse, which, well, that turned into a lot more alcohol. And I apparently did my IOP and my therapist half hammered. I barely remember any of that, but I was in front of a computer for 3 hours. So I was sobering up, and I come out and I was like, "Oh, babe, I'm going to go to Walmart." Cause I needed that more alcohol. So I made up an excuse to leave, and I come back, and literally behind my house, I got pulled over. So that was the last time I drank. That was February 25th, 2021. And that is what ultimately got me to change. I know it's cliche as all can be, but the first, the month before when I had gotten arrested, I only wanted to get out to save my job. This time I knew my job was effed. I just wanted to get out to take care of things that I knew I needed to take care of before I have to go pay for this latest infraction, right? So Chaplain Vic, if you don't have anything in jail, you'll always get a Bible, right? And there was nothing in there. Like, I had no books, nothing. I know how the system works, and I know I'm not going to get out for at least a few days. And Chaplain Vic, a couple days into it, brings me a Bible, and I for the first time in my life, actually, you know, earnestly sought an answer for or a, a wish that wasn't for me, right? And I put it in the book, put my name on it, hand to God. I was like, let me get out of here if you think it's okay. If I'm okay to society to get out of here, take care of what I need to take care of, and I'll take care of everything else on the back end. Otherwise, if you think it's better I stay in here for, you know, for the community, for my family, then so be it. And since that day that he let me out on bail, so I could, you know, take care of business, I just, every day that I wake up is a better day than the before. Um, so now, you know, I had to do my time. I did it. I did it sober. You know, a lot of people I know, if they know they have time over their head, they're not going in sober. So I'm grateful for being able to go through that time and uh, learn a few things about myself. You know, you get 90 days to sit with yourself. I'm grateful that I also had my program and all this that I had going on before, because it's almost like I had to do all of that to get through this, to learn what I needed to learn, and I have now, right? You know, it's all in the steps. Um, but things are not by any means perfect right now, but I mean, they're pretty darn good. They are pretty darn good. It's hard to imagine that, having built up what I did through all of what I had gone through over and over and over, and to have it all hanging by a thread because of one last lesson that I needed to learn. It teaches gratitude beyond belief, because you know, when I got fired, I'm like, all right, how am I going to pay any bills? I got a pending case. Nobody's going to hire me, right? So I literally did anything. I dug some ditches. Did some art. I sold, you know, sold some items that I didn't need, or, you know, just to make it through. And every day since, all of the promises have come true, because uh, things could have been real bad if I didn't have, you know, a few safety nets set up for my dumb ass from prior, you know, good decisions, like having the old house, and, you know, progressing through my career and having a safety net. And um, things are just beautiful now. Like, I'm coaching now. I'm more of into recovery um, based mindset stuff, right? Like, it's all mindset, personal development. But I tend to connect with more of the addicts and the alcoholics of the world. Even, you know, the people that just don't fit in, that really just want to fit in, or want to be, you know, loved and heard and, you know, understood. And I think I have such a broad and long history of, you know, the amounts and different types of adversity that I've gone through and put myself through, some on purpose. Most of them hadn't been on purpose, but they're all lessons. And
Right.
if I can share, you know, anything that, you know, at minimum makes somebody get a smile, but if it stings and it they resonate with it and forces them to think about themselves and their decisions, or, you know, if they feel like they're gonna reach out, I like to keep my DMs and my phone open. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How old's your boy now?
4.
4 years old.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack there
Yeah.
in your story, but you know, just kind of going through, thinking about the things that I've gone through. You know, my parents to this day are still married over 50 years. but they were blue collar workers. We didn't have a whole lot of money. We had enough to get by, but they worked constantly. And I found myself where I was like you, uh, working jobs at 10. I was doing babysitting and
Mhm.
mowing yards,
Yeah.
and I was doing all that. I had a paper out, the same thing. I had a paper out. So I was always trying to find ways to earn money, to do things that I wanted to do. But I had a younger sister, and I also found myself kind of being that parent where my
Yep.
parents were working late nights. My mom she worked at a job during the day and then had a janitorial job at night that she had a business at night that she ran. And I was the one that was making dinners. I was the one that was, getting my sisters situated and taking care of us in the evening time. So my parents weren't around. And I just remember I get out of high school, I go into the military. And there's one thing that I like to say about the military. Listen, I don't regret going into the military. I love that part of my life. I have my Marine Corps shirt on now. I mean, I love that part of my life. It helped me to grow up and mature and build work ethic and all those kinds of things. But there's three things that the Marine Corps teaches you. They teach you how to kill, they teach you how to cuss, and they teach you how to drink.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that I learned in the Marines.
Yeah.
And I drank. We go to the shop during the day, and at night we were running to the liquor store, and we were partying at night and on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. And that led me to, my parents were, alcoholics. So it was in my genes. And I found myself where I was a pretty involved dad. I mean, I coached every single one of my boys' teams. I was always there for parent teachers conferences, open houses, all that stuff. That was important to me because I didn't have that growing up. My parents weren't there. And so I wanted to make sure I was checked in as a dad. So I didn't drink when I was with them and doing those sorts of things, but it was always when I came home at night and it was relaxing, I was drinking. And it turned into a pretty significant habit of mine. And I found myself one day, and I've told this story many times, but I found myself one day, I was sitting in my chair watching TV, having a beer, finished it, and I told my 10-year-old son to go get me a beer out of the fridge. And he went and got me a beer. And when he brought it back, I realized what I was doing. I was teaching my son alcohol by telling him to get me alcohol. And he was
Mm-hmm.
10. And
Yeah.
it really affected me. It really impacted me. And I made a decision. I can't do this anymore. And I talked to my wife. She's like, yeah, I've noticed you've had a problem with it and it's been concerning. And she had mentioned it a few times and I just kind of blew it off. Um, and so I made a decision. That was it. I'm done.
Dude, that's
And I
pretty
stopped.
impressive. That's
I
pretty
stopped.
impressive.
My late father-in-law now, but my father-in-law, who was a recovering alcoholic and had been sober for like 30 something years, he used to say to me all the time, I don't know how you do it without going to AA meetings. I don't know how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I just said, it was just a mindset. When I put my mind to something, I'm going to get it done. And so it's just a mindset shift where I said, my family is more important than alcohol. My kids are more important than alcohol. My wife is more important than alcohol. And I have to make that decision for not only myself, but for them. And I'm going on over 13 years completely sober.
That's
And
awesome.
it's just been something that I've been really proud at and not shy to share. I know, they say Alcoholics Anonymous is anonymous for a reason, but I don't keep it anonymous for me. That's a
Nope.
story. That's part of my story.
Exactly.
That's part of my journey. And that's the same for you. That's part of your journey.
Absolutely.
And so before we kind of, we've gone through a lot in your history and your story, but I want you to know, as one recovery person to another, that if there's ever a time that, and this is just a sidebar, folks, for you that are watching or listening, but if there's ever a time, Dave, when you are really feeling the heat and need somebody to talk to, I want you to reach out to me because I can help, pull you off the cliff, back you up away
Absolutely.
from
I
the edge. All
appreciate
right.
that.
So that's just a little sidebar, but I'm proud of the journey that you've been on has really helped you kind of grow up and mature. And now you've got a young son who's looking
Right.
up to you. You're
Yeah.
his role model right now. you're his hero. Other than maybe Batman or Superman, you're his hero, right? You're his superhero.
Absolutely.
So it's important to keep those things in mind when you're raising him, that, hey, he's looking up to you. And there's going to be a time when he hits an age that you're not going to be necessarily his superhero anymore. He's going to
Right.
look to other things. But if you, that's why it's important for you to build that bond now. And I teach the dads, because I coach dads all the time. I teach them, listen, this is an important age for you to really grow and strengthen that bond with him. So that way he looks to you when he gets into those teenage years and he doesn't want to hang out with dad anymore. Right. He wants to hang
Yeah.
out with friends. But going through your journey, um, what is your biggest fear when it comes to being a dad? What's your son's name?
Tyler.
Tyler. When it comes to being a dad to Tyler, what's your biggest fear as a father that you're just hoping doesn't come true, or hoping that it doesn't go that way? What's a fear for
Well,
you?
you can't be addicted to something you've never had. So my biological father, the one that left it when I was 2, he was a raging alcoholic, and for another 10 years, maybe 15 years after their split. I still haven't seen him since I was 6. That was just a quick, I was down seeing my grandparents. Um, so, uh, not having him as a father around, right? I had a dad. My stepdad came along when I was 5. He was also an alcoholic, which I didn't know about for quite some time, but there's no blood relation there. Um, so my fear is obviously, you know, becoming an alcoholic and or an addict of some sort. You know, back in my day, I could do a little bit of cocaine and know I wasn't going to die. Right? Today, God only knows what the fuck they're putting in things. Right? So that's a little bit of a fear. But my biggest fear probably is, you know, he's going to try something, and it's one of them is going to be his escape route. Is it going to be food? Is it going to be alcohol? Is it going to be anger? Is it going to be women? Um, what's it going to be? Right? And maybe, you know, it's just something that he needs to go to, and I'm going to have to wrestle with it at that time. But that's probably my biggest fear. Um, Otherwise, I don't have many fears of um, the future anymore, right? Like there's certain things I would want for him, obviously, but I can't think about what I want for him. You know, I always thought I would have a little football player or a baseball player, right? I can't. Once you go through enough stuff and you learn to live in the moment and be present, you can't be worried about, you know, he's not hitting off the tee very well. I think he might be right-handed, and I would rather have him be left-handed. You can't think about stuff like that. Um, Other than that, you know, the standard worries of a parent, you know, a car accident or something
Yeah.
strange. Those, you know, you don't think about them, but those moments will have fleeting thoughts. So those are, wouldn't call them worries, but you know,
Yeah.
dad to dad, those kinds of things, and you just, whoa, you got to get out of there real quick, right? Don't think about those things too long.
Right. I think I'm glad you said that about some sort of an addiction, whether it's, like you said, alcohol, drugs, gambling,
Video games,
whatever it is. Those addiction issues that are prevalent in his genes, right?
you know,
He's
they're
he's got
there.
a he's got a dad and he's got a grandfather that's alcoholics, right? Have that addiction gene to them. Uh, I think the same thing for my boys. Often, my boys are in their 20s. They're of age,
Right.
and yes, they do drink. Yes, I mean they're 20 years. One's 21 and one's 24.
Yeah.
Yes, they do go out to their friend's house and have a couple beers. But yes, I think about those things as well. But at the same time, part of me sees the way that my wife and I brought them up and the environment that they've been in. and the things that they've seen or been around to understand enough to know that you can't go down that path. So I'm confident in trusting my boys to make the right decision. There's always those things that I say to them. Hey, look, if you're going to go to his house and you guys are going to be having some beers and stuff, I don't want you driving home. So if I need to come get you, that's not a problem. But you need to make sure you're not under the influence when you drive.
Yeah.
And they've always understood that. I haven't had an issue with that, knock on wood. But yeah, those fears still run in my head as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's the way that you're building the structure within your own home. And this is for any parents that are out there listening that may have addiction issues or maybe struggling with their kids or worried about their children having some sort of an addiction issue. It's the structure in the home life and that love and bond that you guys have with your children in the home that will help them through those kinds of issues. And for me, that's how it was. It was like, listen, my boys were younger. They remember my drinking times. They do remember them because they were old enough to understand.
Right.
But they also understand, I think more so, they also understand how important it was for me to get sober and how important it was for me to stay sober. And they still, to this day, over 13 years later, they still to this day say, thank you, Dad. We're proud of you, Dad, because of the decisions you made to get sober. And so I say that because they understand it to a point where they know that, yes, that can be an issue and can cause problems. And they don't want to fall down that same or go down that same road. So I'm confident in that with my boys. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that, there could be a time where they do tend to show a little bit of an issue or have a problem with something. But now they understand it because they've seen me do it. They've seen, their grandfather was sober. So they've seen those things and they've been around it enough to really understand it. So I think for you with your son, it's important. He's a little young right now, so he doesn't understand it yet. But it's important for you to stay on that path.
Absolutely.
So that way he's not getting to a point where he notices it or sees it or starts to understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind with you and your boy, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think the way that it was phrased, that's the immediate thing you think about in the biggest fears. Like those really aren't my biggest fears. Like if I think about it for him and his future, sure. My biggest fear is just not being around for him, right? Mm-hmm. I want to be here for all of it, right? And I'm not a big AA guy. Like I do read the book, I've read it, and I go to one meeting a week. But the reasoning for going to this one meeting a week is because it's one that I really enjoy, right? All the other ones I've ever been to, it's like pulling teeth or scratching. It's like, but this one is really good. I like it. It's crosstalk, but it's more about now for me sharing to somebody else, right? And because I figured out that part of some of the resentments I have is my stepdad, who's dad, right? But just to delineate, he fixed himself just like you. He actually quit smoking 2 years before he quit drinking. How I will never understand that one, right? Those go hand in hand, right? But he quit smoking and then quit drinking without any help at all, without talking about it. I didn't even know that he had a problem up until I was 14. I didn't find that out probably for another, like 6-7 years ago. Right. And looking back on what I know now, I was like, hey, maybe that's not the best way to ensure or kind of help others not to go down that path. Maybe being stoic and just keeping your information within you is not the best. You know, you could have done better there, Dad, right? Like, you fixed your shit. Okay, show me how, right? And that's one of the reasons, like, I'm not about the anonymous people
Mm,
piece of it right now. Like,
right.
I never have been. I'm very outgoing. So I'm going to share all my shit, and I'm going to show you, you know, my strength, experience, and hope and wisdom, so that, you know, I've had a total of 9 DUIs,
Mm,
right? That's fucking insane. If I can help somebody not get one, if I can, you know, turn somebody's life around somehow with anything, like, you know, I'm a crypto guy too. Like, um, I know how to do a lot of things over the years. You know, I'm a tinkerer. I figure things out. If I can help in any way, it doesn't even have to be just about getting sober, right? Like, my energy is focused on helping people somehow, some way, have a better day, maybe get a better life, and, you know, spread.
right. Yeah. I think that, for me, it was when I first got sober, I did start attending meetings because that's what my father-in-law did. He went to two
Right.
meetings every single week. He did it for 30 plus years that he was sober. As every
Yeah.
single week, it was part of his routine. And so I started going to meetings with him, and then I found a couple meetings on my own. And for me, I think I stopped after about 90 days of going to meetings, and I'd go to one a week. And I think I stopped after about 3 months. And I stopped because I found myself, I couldn't relate with these people.
Yeah.
I couldn't relate with them in the group, other than we all had an addiction problem, either drugs or alcohol. We all had an addiction problem. That was the only commonality between us all. Uh, and I just really struggled with connecting and talking to people, during the meeting, and it just felt odd and different, and I didn't like it. I just
Yeah.
didn't like it.
I
So
absolutely know
I, I
exactly what you mean.
I just stopped, and that's why my father-in-law used to say to me, "I don't know how you're doing it without going to meetings." And I just said, "I just can't connect there. I have to do it on my own, and I'm going to do it because my family's more important. That's why. Period."
Yeah. And that was a big part of me probably not getting some of the signals that I should have been getting, you know, the countless times that I had to be forced to go to meetings for the judge, or to get out off probation, or, you know, outpatient treatments. You know, I've been through it all for 25, 30 years, right?
Mm,
Repeatedly, you know, and sometimes it wasn't just the one time. It was, hey, you fucked up in the middle. You got to keep going and going and going, right? Um, I forgot where I was going with that point, but
no, I know what you mean, and this is not let me just make it clear that, if you're watching this and you attend regularly AA meetings and you enjoy them, that's great.
yeah,
It just wasn't for me. AA is a great resource for you if you're struggling with an addiction issue. It's a great resource. There are wonderful people that can help you through it and help you go through the steps that you need to go through in order to clean up your life. So I fully support the meetings and
absolutely.
what they represent, and how they help people, because they help tons of people. And so it just wasn't something that I felt comfortable doing regularly. And
Yeah.
so I decided to do my own thing. So that's just a little side note, because I don't want to get anybody sending me
Oh
a
no,
message saying,
absolutely.
AA is
It's a
great. It's a great
beautiful
program.
organization and program, and it works for thousands of people. It ultimately is working for me now. Not so much, like I was saying, you know, getting into the readings and following the steps, but it's about, you know, just living a good life, and my opportunity to share. But
Right.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Because so the first 10 years, you know, the 3, 4 different times I was ordered to go to meetings, you know, I'm 20 years old. Most of the people are there are 40, 45
Right.
years old, my age, telling their sob stories about how they lost everything. And I'm like, I just need a signature. Right. I'm just here
Right.
to get the signature, guys. You guys are fucked up. I'll never be any of you guys. Right.
Right.
So 10, 15 years of that. And it took a, it took my personal development program for me to reach uh, a frequency mindset level to be willing to accept God later and to understand the premise of the AA program, right? Some people are, they're gung ho. That's their new purpose in life. They're at meetings 7 days a week, and God bless them. But it's a beautiful thing that has, to be able to go to any city, anywhere, virtually in the civilized world, and if you're effed up, you can go somewhere and just hang out and get some free coffee,
Right.
and talk about your bullshit or
Right.
whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, exactly. I want, let me ask you this though, real quick.
yeah.
When we're talking about, addiction issues, specifically for parents, um, let me get your advice. If a parent was out there watching this or listening and they're really struggling with something right now, or maybe they have a teenage daughter or son that's struggling with some sort of an addiction issue, what's your advice to that parent for either themselves or their child?
For the parent, they have to stop being selfish. They have to literally realize that everything about them is has to be about them, right? And I mean, that's why fitness and nutrition are a part of my program, because you have to rid yourself of all garbage that's messing with your mind, that's causing these, imbalances in you. You have to remove all substances to really figure out who you are first, right? From there, it's just a daily process that you sort out on your own, that's scheduled to your day, that is about being your best you so that you can be there for them and show them the way, because they're not going to listen to you. My kids, he doesn't even listen to me yet, and probably never will. Right? But is he going to do everything that I do? Absolutely. Right? So if you're struggling, you have to make it about somebody else and figure out that your purpose in their life is to be there for them and their mother, right? That's your purpose in life, or father, right? If you're making it about, if you're a father, a mother, a parent, even a grand grandma, grandpa, if you're the primary care for somebody else, you have to take care of yourself first. And that's daily. It's just like recovery, right? I don't I don't just stop being having addictive genes, right? I When you jack up your knee, do you just go see the therapist one day?
Right.
No, right? You got to keep going. Everything is about the daily process and getting yourself to as best as you can be every single day.
Yeah. One day at a time is usually
Yeah.
the normal thing that addicted or recovering alcoholics or drug addicts say. One day at a time. Listen, God's blessed me on this earth with another
Yep.
day. I'm going to make the
Gratitude.
most of it, and I'm not going to worry about tomorrow or the next day. Today is the day that I have to focus on, and once
Yep.
I get through today, then I can worry about the next day. But
Absolutely.
for parents out there, absolutely agree. I know that Alcoholics Anonymous, particularly, they say you have to do this, you have to get sober for you. That's what they
Right.
preach.
They preach
Um,
that.
for me, I
Yeah.
remember my very first meeting that I went to. They said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I don't want to, number one, lose my family, and number two, disappoint my family. And so I'm doing this for my family." And they said, "Wrong. You're doing it for you." And I said, no, I'm not wrong. I'm doing it for my family, because if my family wasn't around, I probably would still be drinking.
Right.
But so for me, yes, I'm doing it for my family, but ultimately it is for me,
Right.
something that I'm doing to clean my life up, but I'm doing it for them. And it's coming back on me, because if I'm taking care of them, I'm taking care of myself. So yeah, it's something that parents need to understand. So if parent out there, that if you're watching or listening, whatever you are, it's if you're struggling with an addiction issue, I mean, obviously you can reach out to Dave through Instagram, whatever. You can reach out to me. But if you're struggling with addiction issue, I highly recommend that you take a day and reach out to somebody that can help you get sober, because all it takes is that first step. That first step is just making the decision to say, hey, I have a problem. That's the first step. Once you can say that, then you're on the right road. If you can't acknowledge that you have a problem, you're not going to get sober, period. You're just not. If you can acknowledge, yes, I have a problem, that's the first step. Now, the second step is to look for help. Talk to somebody, call somebody, go somewhere and look for help, because there's people out there that can help you. I think that's super important. And the lesson that you're trying to teach your son is, hey, I'm here for you. And you're going to have a good life because of how I represent you.
Absolutely.
And the model that you serve, or the model that you show your son, is how he's going to see his life. So he, like you said, he's not listening to you, he's modeling everything that you do.
Yeah.
So if you grow up and you have a child and you're drinking or doing drugs, and they see this and they understand what's happening, eventually they're going to run down that same path. So it's important for you to understand that, yes, you need to do this for you, but you also need to model it for your kids. And that's like Dave is doing right now with his son. Well, that's awesome. I love your story. I love the things that you've shared. We have gone on a long time here talking about all the things that you've done and struggled with. I appreciate you sharing the advice to parents and stuff with that may have addiction issues or maybe struggling. But Dave, if there's a place that parents can reach out to you, look up, who you are, all those kinds of things, the best place for them to do that for that information.
You can find me on Instagram at DavidJames1. From there, you'll find some other links. You can also go to davidjamesfit.com, where I start to get into a little bit of my story and my program and what I offer. I'm getting my YouTube together, so I haven't been prominent over there just recently, too recently. Big into crypto on Twitter at DavidJames1. But just find me. I'm all over social media. David James, davidjamesfit.com. Just reach out, and whether I can help you or not, I have built such a massive network of people that I trust that, if you ask me to build a rocket ship, I'm sure I could find somebody that, could build a rocket ship, right? I could get in touch with enough people to get in touch with the man that really does that stuff, very resourceful. But yeah, just reach out if you're struggling. And for the young kids out there, just don't even pick it up. You're not ready for it, right? You're not ready for the risk to reward ratio is so not in your favor at this point with what it can do to your body long term. I've got all sorts of theories about how I'm, struggling physically because of things that I did when I was 16, pre, finalization of maturity as an adult, right? But just it's too dangerous nowadays. I will say, there's going to be those kids that, they're just in certain areas where it's almost going to be impossible. But some advice that I wish I would have taken from an old friend's dad, that is, if you're going to experiment, keep it natural. If it didn't come from this earth, don't fuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's good advice. I mean, I think, kids nowadays have their hands into so many different things, more things than you and I even
Yeah,
had available. And it's really scary with the stuff that's going on with, fentanyl and all those kinds of things that are out there now, and,
yeah,
different mixes of different drugs. It's just not something that you can trust or rely
yeah,
on. It's very dangerous. So I just don't recommend, like he said, like Dave said, don't recommend even starting, because once you start, you don't know where it's going to take you.
yeah,
And it may be great when you first start off, but the road that it's leading you down is a dead end.
yeah,
And that dead end may be your life, and you
yeah.
don't want to lead down that road. So that's the best
So,
advice. Don't start.
yeah.
You don't want to
And
know.
and one other thing, not just don't start, but occupy your time. Find the people that inspire you, like that you think about a lot, or like, hey, that'd be cool. That guy's cool, or this person's cool, or this is interesting. Um, find people that do the things that you like and do them well, and you know communicate, network, because it's not just the substances, which is a subset of group of kids with problems. All kids have problems. I'm sorry, life is traumatic, childhood's traumatic. It's all traumatic because we're just so inexperienced.
Hmm.
But find people around you that you're interested in the things that they do and connect with them, as well as find a program or coach. When you find these things that you like and you go for them, find somebody that can show you the ropes of everything, quote unquote personal development, but your it's like a personal coach, right?
Right. A mentor.
um that'll you know steer clear. It'll
Yeah.
help you steer clear. It'll put you on a different level to where perhaps you might be able to touch a piece of your brain that you weren't able to before, or perhaps you're maturing early so you can recognize, hey, this is how I want to conduct myself. This is how I want to be. Um, so what do I need to do and stay away from this? Do that, and trust the process.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Finding a mentor, a coach, a pastor, whatever it might be that can lead you in the right direction when you're feeling lost or unsure of life in general, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. David, look, it's been great to get to know you. Great to hear your
Yeah.
story. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to us continuing our friendship.
Thank you, Bryan, so much. You guys, one day at a time.
That's right.
As
That's right.
cliche as all can be, but it really, like, once you hone in your day, monotony is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One day at a time. Well, listen, guys, this has been another episode of Dad Up. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Thanks again to my good friend Dave for being on the show and sharing his journey and his story and the struggles that he went through, not only as a young man, but the struggles that he continues to go through, even being a dad now himself. But he's a remarkable man, got a wealth of knowledge. And so if you ever want to reach out to him, chat with him, reach out to him on Instagram, it's the best place to do that, or look him up on his website. I'm sure he'll be happy to help you. And as always, if you haven't subscribed yet to my show, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the guests that I have on each and every week. And like I always say, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at Dad Up Podcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.